Kevin Duderman to be checking the time as we go along, and particularly for public forum. I guess, I don't know how many people want to speak. I see us with 24 participants so far on my screen, that number. So shall we, Patrick, shall we start?
Yes.
Okay. Tony Reddington, I'm a steering committee member from Wards 2 and 3. I can only, that my screen says is at the bottom, there are 24 people that are participants, but I've only seen about 3 or 4 of our steering committee members and Sydney Hinckley, who's doing the, the hosting in terms of the management of who gets to speak and when and so forth. So I guess we would look first, anybody who would like to speak at public forum. Welcome back, everybody, after 3 months. It's been a very difficult time, and we're beginning to, certainly we will have a meeting this month, let me just mention that, and we're talking seriously about having a July meeting because there's going to be a very significant primary election in early August, and there'll be several contests, including one for a state representative district here in our 2 wards. So I think it's Emma Mulvaney-Stanek versus O'Neill, O'Sullivan, Gene O'Sullivan, who's the incumbent. And that will be a primary fight, and whoever wins the primary is very likely to win the general election. So anyway, having said that, is there anyone that would like to speak at a public forum? I guess, Sydney, you will know somebody who raises their hands, and we probably would restrict it to a couple of minutes at this point until we know how many people would like to speak.
So I'm calling on Jen. You should be able to.
I know, Andrew. Yep.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Jen.
Yes, Jen.
Great. Thanks. Thanks for having me. I just wanted to give the last in-person NPA meeting we have. I had the opportunity to introduce a mural project for the Old North End that I was working on and got started. And then because of COVID, like a lot of things, it's gotten changed and shifted. And so I was able to relaunch it, and I wanted an opportunity just to give a quick update on that and talk about what it is. And so the mural is now, rather than being a focus of celebrating the history of the Old North End, it is going to be pared down to one mural that is encompassing Burlington residents' experiences in the first 2 months of COVID. And so I'm collecting images and ideas and thoughts from folks all around the city, asking them to fill out this Google form that I have so I can incorporate many ideas. And then I'm going to create a mural in the Old North End for us to kind of remember and be with each other's experiences there. So I'm wondering if I can forward that link or somehow get that out through the NPA so folks can participate in that.
That's a good question. Obviously, I would suggest probably use of front page forum would get to more people. I certainly am interested in what is involved here. And this is the first time I've heard of it, Jen. So I suggest some of the more, other avenues. We really don't have a way at with the structure of these meetings to get information. We can't put things out on tables. We can't hand out flyers and so forth. So we're pretty constrained.
Some of the Zooms have like a chat function. I don't know if there's one on this particular.
I'm going to see.
This one doesn't have a chat function.
No.
Oh, okay. That's good to know.
I have been putting it on Front Porch Forum. I'll put it out. I'm going to continue doing it regularly. It's on Facebook and other social media. And I'm really open to other ways of doing online outreach right now, since we can't do the same kind of in-person outreach we were doing before.
Okay, if we're done there, who is next, Sydney?
Hey, Andrew.
Oh, I'm sorry, Barbara, you put your
No.
hand up.
No, I was just saying hi to Andrew. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
okay.
Hi, Barbara. Hi, everybody. We're in Patrick's beautiful backyard on Green Street. It's great.
Andrew Champagne is the one that's just spoke with Patrick Johnson. Andrew is going to the Democratic National Convention. I heard that rumor. And both Andrew and Patrick are members of the steering committee. I think the other members of the steering committee that are here include myself, Tony Reddington, obviously Barbara McGrew, who probably you've seen so far tonight. And I'm not sure, I think the only other one that we expect to be here is
Kevin Duder here now.
Kevin is here, so Kevin Duderman is the other. I think I've recognized all the of the folks who are steering committee members. We're also looking for, as you know, looking for more committee members, particularly as a couple of them dropped down, had to move and so forth within the last 2 or 3 months. Who's next in line on the open forum?
So we have Ben. Ben, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay, you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, good. We've been racking our brains trying to figure out how to use the extensive space in and out of the Old North End Community Center since we can't really do very much inside. I don't know if Jeannie Waltz or anyone else on the Ramble Steering Committee is tuning in on this one, but we've been having discussions about how to deal with the Ramble in relation to the current issues. And it's getting more and more obvious that doing anything on a large scale is going to be virtually impossible, which pretty much leaves it up to individuals to do and produce and promote whatever they can do in a small audience way, porches and street corners and whatever. But in terms of a large organized, fully functioning thing like we've done before, I think that's not going to happen this year. But what is going to happen is the Off Center is going to be doing a play in the parking lot on the evening, well, actually 6 evenings in late July, early August, where people can sit in their cars or bring lawn chairs. And the cast is basically a dumpster and 2 garbage cans with people in them. So that's all I can tell you about that because I don't know anything else about it. But it's going to be a limited audience, very, very self-controlled event. So things can happen, but they're going to have to come to us. And we want to do something on a given evening or a given day. The parking lot it's easy to control the crowd. There's one way in, one way out. We can keep the numbers down and we can control what they do and who they are. So we're trying to not just lay down and die is what I'm trying to say. So if we can get the word out there that come to us if you have an idea, and if we feel like it's can be controlled with the current rules, we'll see what we can do. The end.
Okay, Ben, thank you. I guess the rule will be that small is beautiful, and for the Ramble. Sydney, do we have any other persons that are waiting in the waiting room to
We
speak?
have 2 more. We have Emma next. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Yeah, please
Great.
state your name and what ward you're from. But that would be
course.
particularly important when we get to doing voting, because when we're voting money, each ward will vote separately.
Great. Hi,
Emma.
everyone. Hi, this is Emma Mulvaney-Stanek, Ward 3 over on Front Street. I hope everyone's doing as well as you can in these times. I just wanted to just say a couple words because I have decided to run for a state representative in Chittenden 6-2, which is sort of half of Ward 3. It goes up, the line is kind of funky. It goes up North Champlain and then hangs a left on North Street and goes up Pitkin. And then it includes about the lower southern part of the new North End. It's kind of a 50-50 district for those of us who live in it, 50% Old North End, 50% of New North End. And it changed about 10 years ago with the census. It'll be interesting to see how it continues to change with the new census underway. But I wanted to just simply let folks know, folks might remember I served on the city council for Ward 3 and Ward 2 several years ago, and have been involved in various community stuff and efforts throughout the years, and just decided the time was right. Nothing like a pandemic to have you have deep conversations with yourself sometimes around what change am I trying to make in this world. And I think, you know, what feels really also very important to name is that the world and our country in particular is really coming to terms, some for the first time and some have been facing this for generations, around racism and the real need to center conversations around the impacts on our community, Black and Brown and Indigenous folks, and really making sure that whoever gets elected really keeps that front and center in how we engage community members and how we make policy and how we root out bias and racism within state laws and even here in Burlington. So I look forward to meeting you all. This is gonna be a weird time to campaign. But my campaign team and I are really thinking creatively outside the box on ways to engage people. So feel free to reach out to me. All of my social media and website stuff is Emma for VT House. And you can find me there or through my other means of communication that folks might know. So I'm excited to engage with folks. So don't be shy about reaching out. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Emma, and we'll look forward to certainly to a return, perhaps a open discussion with you and Jean O'Sullivan at our July meeting. And it's true, I think everybody's done some deep thinking in the last 2 or 3 months at one time or another. And I just want to take a moment to say that as a senior, I'm looking forward to another 12 months or so before the vaccine is available to get back to what will be the new normal. I do have a son and daughter-in-law who went through the COVID, and unfortunately they both survived, but one has an ongoing lung issue, which we're finding that as many of you know who've been connected to some of the folks at the Burlington Health and Rehab or Birchwood, that you can get, and even if you're in your 30s and 40s, you can get over the COVID, but there about a third of the population can still continue to have after effects in lung and other issues. So it's definitely been a time of reflection. Didn't mean to take that long, but go ahead. Sydney, do we have another person for public forum?
Yep, we have Melissa. Melissa, you should be able to talk.
All right. Hi, everyone. This is Melissa Heather Kane. 2 things really quickly. One, thank you all for being here. Thank you for moderating the meeting. First thing I want to talk about very briefly is what? Okay.
If somebody's speaking, they should mute them. You can mute yourself, so otherwise we're hearing conversations or noise that come in from outside.
I think that might be from Patrick and Andrew. Okay, so hi, this is Melissa again. 3 months ago, Mohammed Jafar and I started the website www.newamericansinvermont.com. It contains COVID-19 information, community resources such as food, childcare, and so on, translated in over 15 languages. Some of the translations we've done, a lot of it is the videos that have been provided by the Multilingual Task Force. If you know anyone who needs that, please let them know. Again, it's newamericansinvermont.com. It's all volunteer. I personally have spent about 500 hours on it in the past 3 months. Other than that, I'm also here to talk. Jeannie Waltz will talk in a little while. It's on the agenda, but about the Ramble. I'm going to let her talk more about it. But I want to say that we're going to do a porch festival on the last Saturday of July. Anyone who's interested in doing something on their porch, such as a musical review and showing a visual art, anything that can be contained on your porch or on your yard, please get in contact with me. I'm all over Facebook, Melissa with 2 L's. I'm going to put it on Front Porch Forum as well. Alyssa Faber will be helping me with this. We'll have a website up. It's going to be in the spirit of the ramble. It's not going to be the ramble. And a lot more information is going to come out about this, but it'll be all over the Old North End. Thank you all so much.
Sounds really exciting that there's going to be something, there will be some active ramble activities this summer, Melissa. And that I think that's wonderful that you and Mohammed have taken on this project of working with New Americans and dealing with language barriers. We all have difficulty even understanding COVID in English, much less in another language. Who's next, Sydney? You have any? By the way, I see a number, and Sydney, I assume this is the case. We have 28 people online at the moment, so we've made the 20 to 30 goal of participants in this first Zoom meeting of the NPA 2-3.
We do have CVOEO. You should be allowed to talk.
Who's next? We're waiting for.
Hello. Hi, this is Jess Hyman. I'm using my work computer, and so it came up as CVOEO. And I have 2 announcements. The first announcement is actually related to CVOEO. So in this challenging time, in these times of COVID, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
We just lost you.
I'm having trouble. There's a bad connection. I don't know if anyone.
You're coming in and out.
Okay. In and out. Okay. How's this?
Good.
No. Okay. If you can hear me, raise your hand, Barbara or Tony, because I can see you, but the video is stalling. Great. Thank you, Tony. Okay, good. So I have two announcements. One is related to CVOEO. I just wanted to let folks know that there are some really good resources for renters and homeowners, but particularly for renters at CVOEO in the Vermont Tenants Program. So if you're having any trouble with your rental situation, if you have any questions about your rights, either your rental right, your rights as a renter, or your fair housing rights, there are great resources on our website, which is cvoeo.org. And we also have a hotline that's available. All the staff is available to support anyone who has any questions. And so I'd encourage you to check that out at cvoeo.org, the Vermont Tenants Program, and the Fair Housing Project. The other announcement is related to something we'll be talking about later as part of the funding discussion. But I just wanted to let folks know that no matter what happens with the funding discussion, that the Old North End Challenge, our shop local promotion for the Old North End, is going to be happening in July. It's at a time when our businesses need us more than ever. You know, our local businesses have really been struggling throughout this time. And so if you'll remember from last year, the ONE Challenge is a shop local promotion where people will be encouraged to visit all the stores and restaurants and artists and services. There's a really cool app being developed, so it'll be contact free. We won't have those little stamp cards like last year. So go to the Old North End Arts and Business Network website, which is oneabn.org/challenge to find out more information. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jess. I think we're down to, we've got 2 or 3 minutes left in this segment. If there's is there anyone else in line, Sydney?
Yeah, I think Patrick would like to share. Or at least the hand is raised.
Unmute yourself, Patrick, if you want to talk.
Patrick, and remember to give your name and your ward. Patrick?
Hey, hi, this is Andrew. Patrick had to go inside us for a minute. We're here with Charlie, Gino, and Patrick in Green Street. I do make an announcement that you can request an early ballot for the August 11th primary. The early voting will start on June 26th, and you have a full 45 days to vote the August 11th primary. If you are not registered on the day of the primary, you can register and vote that same day. The polls will be open 7 to 7, and we will have governor, lieutenant governor, state senate, some state tests. So it's about 2 months today to the election, but in about 2 weeks, you'll be able to vote early. And just want to say hello, and as a public service, if anyone can give me a call if they want to get registered to vote. Again, Andrew Shampton, my number 0717. I didn't know, Patrick, did you have anything you wanted to say? Okay, well, we're just talking, we want a good turnout. There's a lot of great candidates, and thanks everyone for the time and everyone participating in this tonight.
Thank you, Andrew. And by the way, I did see Andrew, and when he succeeded in becoming a delegate to the Democratic National Convention, his flyer had a great picture, but it said that he had registered more than 1,000 people to vote. Did you say Charlie wants to speak?
Oh, yeah. No, we're just saying Charlie was here. Thank you for your kind words about that, Tony, and I appreciate all your wonderful years. Good crew tonight.
Right. I did forget Charlie Giannone is also on the steering committee. He was the third mask on the left, and the mask on the left that we just saw briefly on the screens. I'm not sure if there's anyone else. We would normally go on to elected officials. It starts at 7:25, at 7:26. But I guess we could squeeze one more person in if there was a need to. Is there anyone else, Sydney, that was wanting to speak?
Nope, I think that's it.
Boy, we're right on schedule. All right. In terms of elected officials, I can't see from where I am. I have no idea who the
Brian's here.
people are.
Brian's here. Kurt McCormick's here, and Brian Cena's here.
Okay, let's start. Whoever's.
And Chris Pearson.
Shall we start with the state senator first because they're at the higher level?
Well, we're not at a higher level. We're across the hall on the same floor, but I would love to go first. We're just sitting down to eat dinner with the kids, but I can give you a quick wrap if now is a good time.
Go right ahead. You're on.
Sure. So, boy, so much to cover. In fact, the last meeting I was at with all of you was 2 days before we left, and our world all got turned upside down. First of all, if anyone is experiencing trouble getting unemployment benefits, let me know. Get in touch with me through email is best. You can find me on the State Senate website, Chris Pearson. It's cpearson@leg.state.vt.us. Send me your story. We'll get that sorted out. As everybody I hope knows, folks who've been unemployed because of COVID or who are self-employed are eligible for not only their unemployment benefit, which is about half of your weekly wage up to a point, up to about $1,000, but also $600 a week through the federal benefit. So that's been a lifesaver for many people, but it's been hard to navigate because instead of dealing with a few thousand cases, they've been dealing with 70 and 50, 60, 70,000 a week. And it's just swamped the system. So let me know if you're having trouble. I would say overall, we've been trying to figure out how to best recover, how to best help people whose businesses have stopped, whose wages have stopped. We have all this federal money that we have to spend by the end of the year, $1.25 billion. And that'll be a challenge to get it out and have it, meaningfully invested, which is what we're trying to do. At the same time, we have upwards of $400 million deficit in our tax revenue coming in, including $120 million in schools. That is a lot of money. That is not a tax the rich a little bit more amount of money. When you add, and I've tried many times, a surcharge on income tax for wealthy Vermonters, you get like $40 million, not 400 million. So we're trying to wrestle our way through that. As we spend COVID relief money, our principle in the Senate has been to try to make investments that could endure more than just this short time. So broadband is an example. Trying to also find ways to pay for HVAC work at schools in a way that could maybe move forward sort of up the timeline for schools, and also maybe help us soften some of the budget deficits in schools. So we're looking for any way we can incorporate the money and have it serve a couple of our goals all at the same time. Then there's criminal justice reform. There's trying to, in the last several years, we've tried to begin the conversation, I guess, around systemic racism. A few years ago, I was on a committee that was trying to revamp the way police are disciplined and how the process they go through when they've been in violation of protocols. And we couldn't get it through the House, amazingly, to have citizens involved in that oversight. We're going back to that. We've already been requiring data collection from officers, but we're now talking about defunding any municipal or sheriff's office that is not complying with that law. We're looking at other policies like de-escalation policies, et cetera. So a lot of work is suddenly coming to the forefront there, which is exciting, well overdue. And if people have ideas, please be in touch there too. So it's way too much to cover quickly, but that's some of what we're up to. I'm struggling to hear you.
Tony, you're muted. Are you gonna call on people, Tony?
What I was going to say is that we had, with 3 people present, each would get 5 minutes, and Senator Pearson, if we could go on to the next person.
That'd be great.
Next, then we'd be giving everybody a fair share.
Okay, next person
Thank you so much.
is Brian Cena, then Brian Pine, then Representative McCormick, and then Max.
All right, so I'll jump right in. Hi, this is Brian Chena, State Representative for Chittenden 6-4. I live in the Old North End part of that district, and it also covers most of the East District. I just like to remind other people to mute yourselves because I hear interference. So I'm going to focus on, I'll give you a brief update on the use of force piece Senator Pearson just referred to, that there's many of us who've been working on use of force policy for law enforcement for years, and there have been a lot of opposition and obstacles, especially from the police. And 2 bills, H808 and H464, were moving in the House and got stalled when the pandemic hit. But the recent uprising happening around the country has reignited interest in those bills, and the Senate decided to take a bill, which Chris Pearson was talking about, and modify that bill, looking at taking pieces of these House bills and other things and adding them to it. And so right now this work is happening. There's a lot of discussion going on, and it's premature for me to tell people exactly where this is going to land, but we're looking at a wide range of changes, including a statewide policy on deadly use of force, possible bans on certain kinds of police interventions like chokeholds or knee holds or things that choke people and cut blood off to the brain, possible bans on tear gas, changes in the training that police officers get, and body cameras. So keep an eye on the press, and if you want more details, you can be in touch with me and I can fill you in. It's going to be moving very fast. Along that vein, some representatives, myself, Selena Colburn, and Deanna Gonzalez, have all called for 20% defunding of the state police and the reallocation of those resources to mental health services, towards ending homelessness, towards economic development opportunities for communities of color, for a fund to take care of migrant workers who are not getting help.
Did we just freeze?
Yeah, I just froze Brian. Now he's gone completely. Okay,
Let's wait a
welcome.
minute to see if we can get him back. If not, Well, why don't we go on? If Brian can clear up the technical issue, we can bring him back for a couple of minutes. And I did not realize Brian and Pine and Kurt, and I would assume Max Tracy also indicated he was going to be here tonight. Is that
He is
Max
here.
also there?
Yes, and Representative McCormick is here too. Kurt McCormick is here too.
So let's do the state representatives first because we've started that. So it'll be Kurt McCormick will be next.
Oh, shoot. I don't know when I got cut off.
Well, that's okay. We'll give you another, Brian, excuse me, we'll give you another couple of minutes. We know you got.
Well, I only need a minute. Just tell me what's the.
You're breaking
It's
up,
happening
Brian.
again.
What's the last thing you heard me say before I got cut off?
Brian, you were just talking about the bills that you were putting through in this time.
Use of force. Did you hear me get to
use
the
of
part
force
about
and that sort of thing? Yeah.
Did you hear me get to the part about defunding the police?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
so we're trying to defund the police and reinvest the money. The last thing is that the Working Vermonters Caucus, which is a caucus that works with labor, unions, and workers' rights organizations, we have looked at a series of policies that we are asking that get attached to relief money to improve conditions for workers moving out of this pandemic. If we're going to be bailing out businesses, we should be looking at bailing out businesses who are interested in using that funding to improve the lives of workers beyond the pandemic. And I'm happy to share the details of those suggestions with you. If you're interested, reach out to me. So I'll stop right there to leave time for others. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. And let's go right on to Kurt McCormick. And hopefully, Kurt, your new laptop works good tonight. Hello.
Hello, Kurt. Oh, man.
What, if Kurt's not ready, let's go right on to either Brian Pine would be next.
Yeah, and then Max. Yeah.
And we'll bring Kurt back when he gets online.
Kurt just unmuted himself.
I'm ready, but Kurt's ready now, so I'm letting him go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, folks. Just all the Zooms and the phones, and it's just crazy. I was just trying to convince someone to report a section of a big bill we're doing, and he refused because he doesn't like Zoom and he doesn't. So, okay, I will be brief. I think I should tell you about the transportation bill, what we call the T-bill, and things that are in there for Burlington in particular, a couple of other things. So the T-bill is one of two bills that the transportation committees work on and vote out every year. Any small bill that's introduced by somebody, I say small, just not as large as those bills, we would, if we like that bill, we would put it in one of those two bills. So both those two bills are very much in play right now. And we passed one of them last week out of the House. It's now in the Senate, and we call that the T-bill. It's $649 million. And, the governor proposes it. Anyone who's ever been on a board of directors, it's very much like that, unfortunately. We struggle to change the governor's budget, but we made some changes. We took $3 million out of the maintenance budget, which is, governor had proposed a 5.2% increase in that budget. It's all state dollars, so by taking money from it, we leave no federal dollars on the table, all state. And with the governor's recommend, it goes to just about $100 million, just that one budget item. So we use that money for the Memorial Valley Rail Trail, get that done in 2 years. Actually, some of that and some other money we found for the rail yard in Burlington. You guys will, City Council will be familiar with this. So we reached a good, it's not a compromise, it was a good solution for where to park the Ethan Allen Express and where to service it. It's going to be in the rail yard, right downtown, right at the Vermont Railway rail yard, just south of the station. And that rail yard needs to, in order to accommodate the train, we need to take 2 tracks and move them to the west. And then when they get moved, another one goes in. and that's where ethanolamine will be stored. That's $3 million, and we put that money in. We actually authorized the spending of some of that money between now, passage of the bill, when the governor signs it, and the last day of this month, if governor should sign it early. In other words, it's in the fiscal year 20. So there'll be no delay on that whatsoever. That's kind of the last piece to get the Ethanolamine Express here. We're still saying it's going to come at the end of next year. Fare free transit. As you know, we put $500,000 into the T-bill when we first passed it out of our committee, and since then COVID hit, and the state received $21 million just for transit. And one of the things the transit agencies wanted to do, needed to do, was to be fare free, because when with the virus, fare free makes a lot of sense. People don't have to be handing money to the drivers or standing by the driver, fooling around with their cards, looking for their cards, just standing there. On larger buses, when you're fare free, you can enter and leave from the rear door. Nobody even goes near the driver. So we're using that money to go fare free statewide until the end of the year. We put some more money in to go past it. We don't know how far it'll go, but I'm hoping that fare free will become a state policy when we learn what a good idea it is. We learn from the experience that we're having right now. It's going to be a lot of work to get people to ride transit again, and the numbers that we had, and obviously what we want to do is expand it. So that's one thing we did to expand it. When I referred to the earlier T-bill, we actually had to write a brand new T-bill in the past few weeks because of COVID. It's not so much the amount of money was different, it was more the amount of money that we might actually get from the federal government. So in the new bill, we put in some legislative intent. It's hard to budget with not knowing how much money we're going to get and what exactly the rules will be on that money. In other words, restrictions, things you can use it for, things you cannot. So we put in legislative intent where we tell the Agency of Transportation how we would like that money spent if it's legal, if it's possible, and if they get it. Fare free being one of those things. Climate related items such as more money for transit and charging stations for electric cars. So I think I'll just stop there, and if there's any questions, I can stay on now. I've totally checked out of my last meeting, which is still going on.
Okay, let's see, we still have two counselors. I think we probably should move on to Brian and Max, because we basically have just 3 or 4 minutes left of the elected officials' time. If that's realistic. And Brian, you are the next. You've already shown your visage on the screen. Why don't we go to you?
Okay. There's so much to talk about, but I'm going to try to focus on a topic that is front and I think at the front of people's minds right now, and that is the issue of the appropriate role of police in our community and in our society. And these issues, I think, really deserve the attention they're getting. It's welcome, it's overdue, and the systemic racism that exists in our society comes out in a very aggressive, very significant, harmful way through law enforcement at times. And so I don't want to castigate all police officers, but I want us to really acknowledge that this issue is one that has been really a serious issue for a lot of folks. It's only now that many people have woken up to it. But I want to talk about the concept of defunding the police, because I think defunding the police, I'm going to list some things it does mean and it doesn't mean, because I think is a real tendency to misunderstand and misinterpret. And I've had this conversation with family and with friends, and I really think it's important for us to get consensus on what we're talking about. And when we say defund the police, it doesn't mean eliminate all police funding. There are some who might advocate that, but I think the consensus in the broad sense of the word is not to eliminate all police funding. It does mean the police will be funded. It does mean that police will not be overfunded. It means that we will redistribute a city budget and that everyone gets a fair share. So some of the things that it means. Defunding the police, and the reasons why is because police should actually focus on crimes and criminals. That's really the purpose of law enforcement. Police are not trained, nor are they equipped to play the role of mental health counselors. Police are not social workers. They're not medical professionals. They're certainly not education specialists. And they shouldn't be responsible for everything in our society. So in many ways, we've really burdened our police with trying to do things that we've asked them to do. They're really more appropriately handled by others. So the defunding police concept really emphasizes reassessing our values and what we want to get from public safety, investing in our communities, investing in our people, investing in things like healthcare and infrastructure and social services and affordable housing, and the things that really we value to get better outcomes so that we need less police. So please don't conflate this with being somehow anti-police, that there's two total camps and there's the anti-police and the pro-police. I think that we need to understand that when we talk about defunding the police, it's not the same as eliminating the police. And in fact, I think those who are conflating those issues are misleading and in some ways doing us a disservice. So I think we just need to be totally upfront. At least that's my perspective on what defunding the police means. And I'd love to hear from constituents, not necessarily tonight, but anytime after this. Thank you.
Tony, there? Brian, if you're done, let's go.
I muted myself, sorry. Next is online is Max. Max, are you there? Councilor Max Tracy.
Thanks, Tony, and thanks to all the other electeds and steering committee members, as well as Sydney, for helping to get this meeting going. This is awesome. It's great to see everyone again. I've missed everybody and certainly missed the dinner. In terms of, I'll pick up a little bit of where Brian left off, because I think that was some helpful context. In terms of the general conversation around defunding, we've heard extensive public comment to that effect this week, and that specifically being focused on 4 core demands from the Racial Justice Alliance, those being getting rid of truancy checks, getting rid of the school resource officers in the Burlington schools, and then a 30% reduction in officers, as well as getting rid of officers Coro, Campbell, and Bellavance, who are involved in different incidents where they used force against men of color and in pretty brutal ways, if I'm being perfectly honest. And so those are the demands that have been put forward and have been echoed in extensive public comments. We are in the process, and this is taking place in the context of our normal budget hearings. The city is in the process of forming its broader budget. And within that budget, we've gone from looking at a very challenging situation where there were going to have to be a lot of cuts, specifically an ask to reopen union contracts and cut benefits. That has since gone away. There's no attempt to, at this point, either cut cost of living increases for union members or city staff, or to lay city staff off at this point, which I see as a positive. They also were able to add back in initial things that were cut initially, like the livable wage accountability monitor, some additional funding for city council. Again, there were some positive things. Since that initial budget was released, the draft, this call to really reassess the police budget has come forward. And I think that as someone who's been on the council for a while and has been involved with the conversation around police reform, I've become increasingly skeptical of our ability to reform this institution. And I think that, the outreach that I've seen has really affirmed that from the community, especially from in the Old North End. We heard from a lot of people from wards 2 and 3 in those public forums, which was awesome. And the real message that I took away was that people are really feeling like reforms have not worked and that we have not seen the necessary change in our police force from those. Therefore, to me, it seems like it would make sense to take up these demands and really try and enact these demands It's complicated though to enact them. There are challenges in terms of having a union. The police have a union and they have a contract that's still in force that they can try to uphold. You can challenge that, but that's a complication. That doesn't mean to say that you don't try and challenge that contract, that you don't try and challenge the police to reduce their force. But it's just to say that it is incredibly complicated to engage with these. There are some cuts that you can do in terms of funding, like positions, because they're currently vacant. For instance, there are 12 positions that are vacant. So we're talking about, for instance, the 30% officer reduction. That's essentially 32 police officers. So the cap of police officers is 105 right now. And then if you just didn't fill those vacant positions, that brings you down to 93 officers. Then beyond that, you still have about 20 officers you'd have to cut to meet that demand. So that becomes a case where you have to go to the union contract, and that has provisions around how and when you're able to lay people off. So again, that becomes a challenging that presents a challenge within the context of meeting that demand. Not at all to say that you don't try to fight that fight, but that's just to say that there is that complexity. The same thing goes for the demand specifically around firing those officers. That was something that was brought forward last year when those videos of them tackling the men of color downtown first came to light. There was a call to fire them at that point. That power under the charter is vested in the chief. Because of their contract, they're saying that there's a double jeopardy aspect, that they were punished. The punishment, however, was really about 2 weeks, which was wholly inadequate in my mind. And so that presents a challenge. Again, not to say you don't fight that. I think that there is a need to get rid of those police officers because of their behavior. So that's been that's been really coming to the fore. And now, at least for me, I'm looking at how we try to effectuate the changes that we're hearing from the public as wanting to see in the next couple of weeks. In terms of the budget process, we'll have the budget. We were planning on voting on the budget on Monday, but the mayor, because of this, is reassessing his plan basically around police funding, such that we don't have the mayor's recommended budget, which he's required under city charter to provide to the full council by the 15th of June. So what it's looking like is that the mayor is going to provide that budget to the council and the public on Monday, which is based off of the feedback that's been provided. But it's not necessarily, we don't know exactly what feedback he's going to take and what he's not going to take. But that should come out on Monday, where it'll be presented at the Board of Finance. That's going to be at 5:30. Then we have a full council meeting on Monday as well at 7:30, or at 7, starting at 7, with public comment at 7:30. And the budget wouldn't be discussed at or voted on at that council meeting. It's looking more like the budget will come to a vote on the 29th of June. So that's sort of where things stand on that, to kind of, again, provide some additional context.
President Tracy, thank you for your time. We went over a little time, but your information is so, what's the right phrase, so important, and it's this whole area has swept this community, not just in the last 2 weeks, but this has been going on for, as you know, really has been coming to a boil for a long time. So good luck on in moving forward, and I'd like to move quickly.
Tony, can I get any questions? Because I have one.
We're now 10 minutes behind schedule. We have the presentation from DPW and then the voting on the money. I agree with you, Barbara. I would like to continue, but I'll leave it up to other steering committee members suggesting, should we have a few questions for President Tracy? Give him, say, another 7 or 8 minutes.
Happy to answer questions from folks if they have them.
I have one. I couldn't quite see how to raise my hand virtually tonight. I'm just changing the subject a little. This is for both you, Max, and for Brian Pine. I'm just wondering what you think of the mayor's box-it-in strategy for COVID and the return of students, both now and in the fall. I have followed it assiduously, but I have not seen any benchmarks for if there are outbreaks and spikes, what would happen? Would things be dialed back? Do you think the box it in strategy will work if quarantining is optional, especially when there are literally thousands coming back in the fall? I have a lot of concerns around that.
Yeah, the box-in strategy has its limitations for sure. The notion that you quarantine for at least 2 weeks or 7 days, and then you get an actual test is best practice, and I don't think that was put in place. And so the fact that students were not actually quarantining, and we heard very clearly from constituents, neighbors, people who've seen it, actually right in front of them, that students have just arrived and they're carrying on as though there's no need to quarantine. So it's a real double standard, because if you're a worker who has a job in Vermont this summer and you arrive, you actually are required to quarantine. And so it's not being enforced in a way that I think is the best for public health outcomes. So that piece, I believe, was not handled by the state and by the city, honestly, in a way that's going to necessarily lead to the best health outcomes.
So what can the council do?
So I guess to my end, I think I'm continuing to talk with the university. I think we need to continue to put pressure on the university to be clearer about what their plans are, communicate with the full council as to what those plans are, because I see it very much as the institution's responsibility. I very much feel your concern, Barbara, around having the students come back, especially given that many of them are out-of-state students who may be coming from areas that have been really hard hit from COVID. So I had initially suggested to the university that if a student didn't have an internship or a really essential need to be back in Burlington, that they really tell the students not to come back until the fall when they've really fully fleshed out their plan. That sort of I don't feel like that was really communicated to them. So I think that's going to continue. We're going to continue to need to put pressure on UVM. I think the other piece that I also want to mention is that we're going to need to continue to advocate and push hard for testing resources. And that's been something that I know that counselors have been doing and that the mayor's been doing. That responsibility falls to the Department of Health. And in response to the most recent outbreak, they've been offering testing this week at where we normally meet at the NPA, at the ONE Community Center. And that will be the case tomorrow from 9 to 2. They'll have testing there. I've been pushing the mayor's office and through them sort of the Department of Health to offer additional testing over the weekend and next week. They haven't firmed up a plan on that. They're continuing to push Department of Health to offer further testing into next week in different locations, and also more specifically to offer that testing at times when people are not at work, because the 9 to 2 time frame, it doesn't work for everybody, and that's been something that's been recognized. And so they want to make sure that people who do have to work 9 to 5 could also potentially get tested there. And this has been a free resource that's been offered through the Department of Health at that location. But again, tomorrow 9 to 2 it'll be happening.
And just to follow up though, Barbara, the limitation for a city in Vermont is that we don't have a health department per se. We have health officers, but that's like other duties as assigned for code enforcement. So cities don't enforce health laws in Vermont, states do, the state does. And so we have a health department that we rely on, and the city doesn't have a lot of jurisdiction, if you will, we can persuade and use moral suasion, but other than that, there's not a lot of teeth there for local government on health issues.
I mean, I was horrified to read that Champlain College doesn't even have an off-campus student housing office. They don't know where these students are or how to contact them.
I was as well.
So, all right, thanks.
Questions. We have one from Kurt.
Yes, just to be clear, something that Brian said. Since this past Monday, June 8th, people coming into the state do not have to quarantine themselves if they're from one of the 55 counties in New York State and New England. If that and to be on that list, there's a list, you can see it if you go to the governor's website. that those 55 counties are counties where there are less than 400 cases of COVID per million population.
Thank you, Representative McCormick. We have 1 more minute. If there's someone with a quick question, I just want to make one comment is that I'm worried about the lack of use of masks. And one of the problems with masks that I see is they're not available at low cost. A lot of people, it may not seem like much, but a useful mask still costs about $2. And I think that's one of the barriers, particularly in the Old North End, of why we're not having a lot of usage. I don't know how we get around that, but we were given some at the beginning, but they're not readily accessible as far as I can see.
I like to make a quick comment based on Green Street right now is Party Central. There's license plates from all over the country, and I really mean all over the country, and there's no social distancing, no mask compliance. Most kids are so clear, they will sink us. I'm sure Max sees this on a regular basis. It's really alarming that we would even consider allowing the college based upon the attitude and the conduct we see right now.
Amen.
Our last question is Melissa.
Melissa?
Hi. So thank you all so much for what you're doing. I could talk a bit about the mask piece in the Old North End. So I was at the mask distribution that they did at the One Community Center about a month ago now, which I advocated for because they were doing it primarily at they weren't doing it at the Old North End. So I talked to Max, who talked to the mayor's office to get them to do mask distribution in the Old North End. So they did that, and I went and I helped out and I volunteered with my mask on. And I then took 80 masks and I walked around the Old North End and I dropped some off, and I dropped some off at the shopping bag and a few other the little stores. And they were so grateful to have the masks and a couple of people started crying. They didn't know where to get the masks. And so I went back to Zach, who's the mask distribution guy from BCA, and he was so proud. He said, "Oh, great, we've distributed 15,000 masks now." Great, but they weren't distributing them in the Old North End. That's still a continuous problem. So what I've been doing, I myself had, and it's not about me, but it's just as an individual, I've distributed 500 masks. I volunteered through the city and I got some from the city, but what they were giving the Old North End were kind of the leftovers. And so they weren't the breathable kind. They were really thick and people can't breathe with them. So my friend was making them and I went back and forth and got some thin ones and I was dropping them off at some of the stores. Then the city started going to some of the stores based on the suggestion of Will Clavel. And so they started going to the African Mart and a couple other ones. But there's still a lot of people who don't have masks. They just gave, actually Sydney and I did some food drop off on Tuesday and we were able to distribute about 180 masks to families when we were distributing food. But what is happening is that there still is not a lot of masks available for the Old North End. It seems like I'm personally delivering a lot of them to Old North End residents. And the city has given out 20,000 now, but I would really like the numbers of how many are given to the North End and to Old North End members who actually need them, specifically low income folks, because to get the good quality ones, they're selling them online anywhere from $5 to $20. I'm going to talk about this briefly during my budget thing, or whatever the next thing is. But you can get masks in bulk that are good, that are triple layer CDC approved for $250 each. The city really needs to be able to get masks to the Old North End. And I would love to see people empower city councilors, get more money into the Old North End to get those masks, to see the importance of that. And also for translation resources, that goes for state officials, all officials, to get more translation money to ALV who are going and doing the biggest job of getting folks to that. Okay, Charlie's going, why is she talking? But I would like to see that because they're all here. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Melissa, thank you so much. You really, that's, if we want, if you're worried about getting infected, the worst thing that you can run into is somebody in a tight hallway or in a store or somewhere who's not wearing a mask. It's really, it's scary, to put it mildly. If I get, let's face it, if old people like me get the COVID, we're dead. So we're really sensitive to this mask issue. Okay, let's, if we can switch over to the presentation by from Department of Public Works, Rob Golding. Bob Golding, is he here? Sydney, is he set to go? And then we would do our voting on the money. And I was going to say, before we get to the money, I would hope that Patrick will take over the meeting when we start doing the allocation of funds and that process. If you would do that, and Kevin Dudeman has offered to handle the keeping the financial score as we go along. So get ready, Patrick. You're going to have you'll have a job to do in about 10 or 15 minutes. Sydney, I'll let you engineer with Bob what he's going to do next.
I don't
Is he
think
here?
we don't have a very good internet connection. I don't know
Oh,
if it'd be
what
good
a
if I did
oh
it.
wow,
Really
what a great
poor internet.
excuse. I see. No, I understand. Okay, that's a good point. Barbara and I will muddle through then. Now, the question is Bob Golding from DPW here?
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
I can't see it on my screen, so.
Okay.
Hey, Tony?
It says DPW Communications is his name.
Right. I just don't see it on my screen. Go right ahead, Bob, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Tony.
I see over here. Go ahead.
Can you
Sorry
folks
for
hear
the
me?
delay.
Oh, that's no problem. It was really thankful that you folks could have us here. Really interesting to hear what everybody was talking about just before this. But again, thank you very much. We appreciate the time you've given us. You know, the last couple springs that we've asked to be on here to give you an update on the citywide construction plans, but really the purpose here is to drill down, no pun intended, into some of the Ward 2 and 3 specific plans. And then, you know, to the extent you have questions, happy to answer anything you've got. So I'm going to run through this presentation quickly. I know you're short on time, and I know you may have questions that are more important than this presentation. So what I'll do is go quickly through this and then happy to answer any questions. So our construction season did get started. It got started with a bit of a delay, not entirely that significant, thankfully, but COVID did delay our work a little bit. We got started in early May, began our sidewalk work. But to back up for a second, a lot of the kind of off-season, especially as it coincided with the onset of the pandemic, and as that became clearer and clearer, a couple of things we wanted to do, working closely with our city attorney's office, working with the council when we brought contracts forward, was to insist on a couple key provisions to protect the city's financial liability and the public health of our residents and the public, with a couple things that we've required in the contract. I won't go too far down into those details, but I do want to let you know we were mindful of that as the season started. You can see here one of our employees out in the field masked up. Regulations change, as you all know, every week, but we are closely tracking those to make sure we're in line with those and exceeding those where we can. We're here really this time, like we were last year and the year before that, to talk about the ongoing implementation of the Sustainable Infrastructure Plan and now the Clean Water Resiliency Plan. These plans really were designed to reinvest in core assets, our sidewalks, our paving, our water mains, and with the Clean Water Resiliency Plan, after the really troubling summer of 2018, where we had some impacts at the wastewater treatment plants, to really reinvest in a lot of that equipment, which is still original to some of the 1994 upgrades to the wastewater treatment plants. We have a whole lot of plans and a whole lot of work that's been ongoing, and a whole lot more this year that we'll share. Starting with sidewalk reconstruction, we've done quite a bit over the years. I'm not going to bore you with the numbers and the details. Happy to share those later on. do want to let you know one of the more exciting things this year is we are focusing a lot more on run repairs. A lot of the work over the last few years, where we've essentially tripled normal production, has been focused on longer runs. We heard from the community, the council and the mayor last year were able to reallocate a little bit of funding so we could take on a higher load of these short run segments, which tend to be a little bit more expensive because they're less efficient to do. But we have a lot of enthusiasm about getting those done for you this year. I'll show you that list of what it looks like in wards 2 and 3 in a couple seconds, hopefully. We're also excited to let you know that much like we did in 2014, we're reassessing all 130 miles of our sidewalk network this year, essentially categorizing the shape and condition those sidewalks are in, matching that to where they're located, pedestrian use, impacts to things like access to senior centers, and some other kind of key metrics that we've created. It's called the Pedestrian Propensity Index, but it helps us quickly, at least before we do our field work, categorize the condition of the sidewalk network. Very quickly, I'll show you the map here. It might be a little hard to see, but everything in red represents either one of the long run sidewalks or one of the short run sidewalks that we'll be undertaking this year. This list on the left is most, if not all of the streets, all of the sidewalks we'll be getting to. Some segments of each. On some streets, there might be more than one segment. On some streets, there might be a very small segment. This is the list, and certainly happy to share this when we have more time after the fact, offline, address anything you want. This map is available online, and I'll have a link later on in this presentation. We are paving, of course, again this year in line with a normal year, which is traditionally 2.5 to 3 miles. You can see we've far exceeded that many times over the last few years. A couple speed bumps this year, mostly related to COVID-19. One of which is we did have, as I mentioned, some COVID-19 contract requirements. Possibly because of that, we really only got one qualified bid this year. It was in line with a normal engineer's estimate, but still higher than we would have hoped for. That, in addition to a delay of some water projects, which we do in advance of paving projects, because we don't want to put down fresh asphalt when we have to kind of rip up a street to work on subterranean infrastructure. A couple projects needed to be delayed. A lot of our water projects, water main based or sewer based, require some level of service disruptions or the need to enter people's houses. We didn't think that was prudent to do in the middle of this pandemic. As things evolve, we can always revisit that decision. You can see here the approved list, the contract that was approved with our paving streets. A couple that I highlighted that may be of kind of immediate interest to you is a section of North Ave, that very southern section, and Hyde Street, where we saw a lot of winter deterioration that we'll be doing some extensive patching on. Again, this will all be on a map if you want to visit that map, and or happy to answer questions specifically about our paving program at any time. I mentioned our water main work. It is really the first time, at least in recent memory, where we've undertaken as a city this proactive effort to upgrade water mains before they fail. Now, there have, of course, been high-profile incidents with water mains, which we think underscores the importance of this work. Unfortunately, again, as I mentioned, the mile or so that we had planned this year is going to be at least postponed for a bit. Water main work, the way we do it, which is a relining project where we run a liner, which does require us to set people up on temporary connections to water and sometimes enter people's houses, obviously, when they're present with their permission. We just didn't think right now was the time to put that burden on our residents. So some of this work is at least postponed for most of this year. The Clean Water Resiliency Plan, which we can also loosely refer to as Sustainable Infrastructure Plan, phase B, really came, it was in development for many years, and then we accelerated kind of the end of getting it across the finish line after summer 2018. We had a couple incidents related to some old infrastructure at our wastewater treatment plants. This year, we do have 3 different projects essentially planned to address some of that aging wastewater and stormwater infrastructure. One of those projects includes upgrades to all 3 wastewater treatment plant disinfection systems. 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had a disinfection issue at our main wastewater treatment plant, which is very much related to the work that will be ongoing. We suspect it wouldn't have happened with these projects in place. We have advanced these projects through the state revolving fund, which does add time and some administrative burden, it does keep the rates down. We thought that was a careful balance to reach for residents. We have many other projects planned for 2020. One project, the sewer pipe relaying project, is going to be at least postponed. Again, service disruptions, didn't think that was something we should undertake right at this time. We do have some really exciting green stormwater infrastructure work that is fully grant funded through kind of the first of its kind state grant. We were excited to have captured most of the money the state was offering. 6 of those projects are going to be planned in the Old North End. At this time, we expect most of them to be subterranean work, so they won't impact the public right-of-way to the best of our knowledge right now. That planning work is just beginning. We'll have a lot more information that we'll be sharing with the community. And as the need arises, certainly engaging folks with where they go, any potential impacts related to construction or the building of these systems. But we think it's a really positive benefit that will come to the community, and some similar work that was done in the Old North End in 2012, I think, contributed significantly to the prevention of a lot of CSOs, which is a conversation for another time. I'll touch quickly on transportation and our quick build program. The South Winooski Avenue lane reconfiguration is scheduled for fall 2020. That's the Pearl to Main segment, 4 lanes, currently down to 3 lanes. Center lane would be a turning lane, bike lanes in both directions. The North Winooski Avenue work is delayed to 2021. There are COVID-related issues, staff capacity related to that. I think critical things like that, and certainly we can address that in more detail. I'm just breezing through this for time right now because I want to make sure I hit everything. Battery and Pearl, you may have noticed, is under construction now. It's a kind of quick build to permanent conversion. A couple others, Pearl and George and the Elmwood and Grant bump out crosswalk. Permanent installations expected in a few weeks to about a month and a half. We have heard a lot of good and bad about people's expectations and feedback on the Greenway. We did conduct a survey, and we'll have a further discussion with the Walk Bike Council, kind of next steps on that project. That'll happen in about a month. City Hall Park is underway. Again, there was a delay on starting that project. Obviously, with the state of emergency, we couldn't start that project, but with the Parks Department, who is co-managing that with us, we expect this to last until about early October at this point. And let me just finally touch on a public meeting we'll be having on June 25th. You may have noticed a couple front porch forums. We have conducted a study and an analysis of potentially moving to a consolidated curbside collection system where trash, recycling, and compostables are all collected by the same hauler, at least by neighborhood. This is actually the way most municipalities tend to do this work. We're somewhat in the minority in how we handle this work. Nothing set in stone, and this next step is to talk with the public. So June 25th, we'll be having a virtual meeting. We expect any feedback we receive then to kind of modify next steps. We'll have another meeting in July, and depending on how this all evolves, we may be bringing certain recommendations to the City Council late summer, maybe September, maybe early fall. There's a website up there, and certainly happy to share more information with you. That website has the public meeting details, login information, and the report itself if you want to dig into those details. I just want to say thank you again for having us. Certainly happy to answer questions if there's time. There's 4 resources here. Certainly the top 3 I hope you're mindful of. The construction portal has a list and a map of all of our projects. Maintenance infrastructure requests, call customer service, email them, use ClickFix. I think we have a record of responsiveness. Long-term issues do tend to take a little bit more time on the platform, so we thank you for your patience on those. BT Alert is a new system that we've been using for urgent alerts like beach closures, snow bans, and major infrastructure issues that may impact health and safety. So these are really good resources. My information is there. Let me just end right there and say thanks very much for having us again.
So, we really need to move on to appropriating these. Is it possible, Bob, you could come back? We're going to hold a July meeting, which we usually do not. We usually take July and August off. Would it be possible if you come back basically for questions for perhaps 10 or 15 minutes or so at the next meeting? We'll talk about it as putting it on our agenda, but because we just don't have the time at the moment. And I know people have questions about the sidewalks and the other items that you brought up. So listen, thank you. It's a good broad brush approach. And we look forward to perhaps speaking with you or someone else from the department in July.
Tony, you've got it. If you guys want us on the agenda, I'm sure one of us will be there. Thank you, guys. Thanks very much.
Okay. And I'd like to now, if we can, very quickly move on to I'm sure there's a number of people here who are very interested. We have $2,500 from each ward that's available. It has to, in order for it to be utilized, it has to be spent and the receipts available and signed off by a member of each ward and gotten to CETO by the 15th. Now, we may be able to stretch that by a few days. The point is that there's not a lot of time. We clearly would have liked to have done this in February and March rather than having it delayed to today. And what's difficult is that each ward has to vote on a particular appropriation. And so I'm not quite sure how this is going to work, Sydney, with I just see a list of 22 people here and now 21 people, and how this is going to vote. But someone is going to have to make a proposal that we spend a certain amount of money and that the person, whether it's the ramble or some other activity, it has to be the person receiving the grant needs to basically be hustling literally within the next week to get this the expenditures done and the receipts in, so that because on June 30th at midnight, our $2,500 in each ward disappears. It's gone. So we either use it or we literally are going to lose it. We know that no one can. The council is aware that every single ward is run into this issue. They certainly forgive us for not being able to effectively expend these funds. This is the first year when we went from $400 a year to $2,500 per ward. So it's sort of like this is our rookie year, and unfortunately, we had something starting to interfere with that in early March. I leave it to whoever has a proposal or a motion to make by ward for the expenditure of funds. By the way, in the last several years, we split it pretty much 50-50 between the community dinner and the person and the nonprofit that we normally rent from. That's not possible to do in terms of the space because of our new space, but the community dinner is able to. And Janet Carskadens, I know that she is in a position to expend some funds, but I leave it to the floor for a motion for expenditures and how much, and this can be done by one of the recipients if they're a resident of the ward.
Hey, Tony, did the steering committee come up with a slate, like a proposed amount for each of the proposals, or like are we doing the 5-minute per 5-minute presentation per applicant process that we had originally come up with?
No, I would liken the process more to bumper cars than any rational system. We're up against a tight timeline. Those that are able to make a presentation and work the financial procedures are going to, they're going to be successful. There's just a couple of the folks withdrew their proposals. Those that have proposals aren't necessarily able to move their funds in the next 10 to 12 days, as they have to in order for the money to be utilized. So, and we had no one to, what's the right phrase? When we met as a steering committee last couple of weeks ago, there just wasn't a way to put a system that could respond to the tight, quite frankly, the tight timeline.
Right. I would propose that, and if you would agree, to just run through the list in the agenda of everyone who applied for funding, like just to say a piece and say if they are even pursuing funding before we move on to any kind of voting or proposing any kind of funding allocation. Just to say a piece or two. It doesn't have to be a full presentation, but just something? Because I know, for example, that Allegra isn't here.
First up
So,
would be,
so you know, and Allegra is no longer.
Okay, so the next one is Jess Hyman. Are you here, Jess? You're actually involved in two of these requests.
Yes, I am here, and I'm actually just involved in one of them. I'm not sure how my name got on the ramble line, so ignore that. What I am here for is for the Old North End Challenge, and Jane Nodell and I put in two proposals. We put in one proposal for Ward 2 and one proposal for Ward 3. For a request for $250 from each ward, so for a total of $500. And it's to support the Old North End Challenge, which is a shop local campaign for the Old North End, to help get more people spending more of our money right here in the neighborhood and supporting our local businesses and helping strengthen our community through that. We had originally planned to have the challenge in April. We did it for the first time last year, kicking it off at the Ramble and then for a month afterwards, and had big plans for this April, and then COVID happened, so of course it didn't. It's rescheduled for July, and we have a good contact-free plan with a really cool app that Melissa developed to help get people into all the local businesses and to give our neighbors the support they need, especially in this time of COVID. Although the challenge is in July, we have a plan to extend the funds before the end of this month. We can prepay for advertising and printing, and so we are ready to do that. And so we are respectfully requesting a total of $500 to support this great initiative. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Jess. That's
oh, I'm sorry, and if I could just add, it's an initiative of the Old North End Arts and Business Network.
I participated last year, and it really does get one to go to certain places you wouldn't necessarily go otherwise. Not that you wouldn't want to go, it's that people forget that they have businesses right in their own neighborhood that they could that would be would have products and services that they could use. The only other proposal here was the one from, it was actually had Melissa's, is the put your dollar where your heart is. Jess, you're on that. For some reason, your name got on that also.
Well, that is the Old North End Challenge. They put your money where your heart is. It was the slogan for the Old North End Challenge. And so I'm not sure how that got on the agenda, but that's just, I'm only on here for one thing, the Old North End Challenge, and I'm very happy to have been able to say my piece, and I can't wait to hear about the other proposals.
So it would be Jean Waltz would be speaking on another aspect of the Ramble?
Yeah, so
okay.
Can everybody hear me okay? I just want to preface this with what a hard decision it was to me personally saying this summer I am not willing to coordinate the Ramble, knowing that encouraging events will essentially be, I know that how people want to ramble, there's different comfort zones with that reality. And, you know, unfortunately, because of the nature of COVID, so many of the grants and the money, whatever that we were hoping to get, whatever, in the end, we actually don't have a budget that might possibly even support these events in, you know, adhering to CDC guidelines. Like, as much as like we want for people to find ways to safely congregate, the bandwidth and the oversight that would be involved with that is sincerely out of, I want to say, my scope, but I also know the people that I work closely with agree that this is out of our scope of expertise. And ethically, the idea of, you know, maybe creating a scenario that might put people at risk. It's not really even about liability or, you know, all that kind of stuff. We like sincerely just want to have a scenario where the old North End is in a safe place. So we've, you know, I personally have said I am not going to coordinate the ramble, but the ramble belongs to all of us. Okay, it's not a thing that it's more like a vibe. It's more like a concept. I am hoping that I mean, we all know that the governor's orders are saying you cannot have a festival. You cannot have people congregating over 25. I mean, that's what it is now. We know that's going to change. 6 feet away, wearing masks, all that kind of stuff. Like, if that can happen on July 25th, that's great. But if we were to call it the Ramble, then the Ramble would be responsible for any kind of possible, you know, I just don't want us to be, I don't want the Ramble to, in the end, be a gaggle of goofies that decided that they should spearhead an idea where eventually people made bad choices. But you know what? Anybody can do anything they want on July 25th. So back to the proposal. I originally asked for 1,500, 750 from each ward, knowing that our expenses have you know, majorly exceeded that. The way I understand how things go, I'm actually submitting invoices from last year. All of the things that we did from last year obviously exceeded 1,500. But so my hope is that we're all going to get a little money in the bank for next year, because, oh my God, I really want that to happen.
Gene, you make an important point. I recall very specifically last year that one ward provided money for through June 30th last year, and the other ward said, we'll wait until this year's money. And now we're talking about this year's money to appropriate for the Ramble. So I'm not sure which ward was which, but we're right with you in terms of one of the wards was already obligated to give you some money to cover some of the expenses where you have invoices that are due. So
I just want to let you know, it's an investment that for sure is going to, I think if we now make an investment in the Ramble that will happen in 2021, we're going to get a million feelings times a gajillion back, because
right.
We need it.
Right. Okay, but basically, let me just state that we've basically got two proposals, and we'll say our normal proposal comes every year from the community dinner. So we sort of know what that is, and each year the needs of that dinner change. Like they might need tables one year, another year they may need you know, large pans and pots and so forth. It changes. So I don't think we need a special proposal or special discussion from Janet Carskadden. Right now, what I'm hearing, Gene, is that $1,500 from each ward is the number that you believe that can be usefully, I shouldn't say usefully, can be effectively utilized by the Ramble either this summer or going into next summer,
I just
this fiscal year.
Tony, Janet
Yes.
is my right-hand person for the Ramble. I don't know if you know that. And I really think I would like her to speak about the community dinner before any further conversation. Okay.
Tony, Janet wants to say something.
Yeah, I would like to speak briefly. I won't go on, but I'm just going to say that that we do have receipts. That we do have receipts up to $2,000 that we can use, because I know there's money on the table that we can be reimbursed with, which will help us in this next year. We're in the process of making plans to help to serve meals to the community, and some of that can support whatever ends up happening, whatever permutation happens with the NPA. But I want to support. We want to make sure that this money is used, because there's so many different organizations here that are at the table that have it. So we do have that. It sounds like Jeannie has money, has receipts that can be done. It sounds like Jess has receipts that can be used. What you're asking for, right, Jess? That you have receipts. Yeah. So we just want to say, like, that's what we do have up to that amount of money that we could have receipts that has been spent on the community dinner to support the NPA. So, but we're happy to make sure that that money is allocated and used by our community, because our community does need it.
And Tony, I want to point out, whatever money we get, as in the Ramble, is not going to be spent this summer. It's not happening. Okay. I love the Old North End so much, and I want all of the entities that actually might use that money to implement a project to supersede anything that might go to the Ramble. But of course, I'm not going to say no to some money. Okay.
Okay, what I've heard, and Kevin Dudeman, you're keeping score here, but I've heard Janet Cascadden saying the community dinner could utilize up to $2,000, or basically if you split it between the two wards, $1,000 each. We've got a proposal from Jess Hyman with the Old North End Challenge of $250 from each ward, and then the balance up to $1,500 each ward could be is applied for by the Ramble. And I look to you, Kevin, to put those figures together as maybe a single resolution for each ward of $2,500, and then we could have one vote.
Melissa, jump in, Melissa.
Get in there.
Thank you. Hi, Tony. You've been reading my emails all week.
Yes, I have. I needed to get something on the table.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
So my proposal is for the website I spoke about earlier, which is the www.newamericansinvermont.com. I recognize that this is backwards, but this is one of the business cards I've been handing out. I've been spending a lot of my own money on this, which I don't mind, but I am not a rich person. So the website goes to support folks in Vermont who do not speak English as a first language. When I look at the numbers, we've had about 12,000 page hits and 4,000 individual unique visitors. For 3 months for a website that's unique to Vermont, that's huge. More than half of that has come from Burlington. And I'll say that most of that I can't get to the analytics that say what neighborhood, but I'd say a good percentage of that likely comes from the Old North End. That's COVID resources translated in 15 languages. It's basically a one-stop shop. We have gotten some grants. A lot of it is pretty much me on the ground, or working my computer, finding things from Washington State, finding things from the Multilingual Task Force in Burlington, or working with folks around the world who I know, in Nepal, in Tanzania, to translate documents so that they're very quick. I've been making graphics, which this graphic specifically has been shared 200 times at least. Oh, that's not going to work. but it's the graphic for testing in COVID. It's the yellow one that went out this Sunday and Monday. So I've been doing a lot of work on this. What I propose for this, for the grant, is specifically in regards to marketing, because we do need to market more. I got these business cards made on Friday, and so far I think I've handed out about 400, and it went up. The number spiked quite a bit. And so if we can get the word out more to folks, then we can get people more to the website. There are a lot of people doing translation. There are community liaisons. There are translators from ALV, and they're doing a fantastic job. I think most people know there is a severe limit on resources in this state and in this city, in terms of how people are getting information. And so we're in addition to those. I'm not saying we're the only
Right.
reason.
The question is, how much are you asking for this between now and the end of next week that you would have receipts
I can
for?
spend it. So I can spend whatever money I'm granted. Now I'm going to give you the total in just a second. Now the marketing budget would be $400 to Vantage Press in the North End. They will do it via credit. And that would be for postcards and posters. And then I would also ask for chalk which I can definitely cost. And then the second, I had talked to Pet, and she said that we could, because I have been an employee in the past of the city through Burlington Parks, Recreation, Waterfront, that I could be tasked with having myself give money for myself, and then I could get things translated, such as the NPA. What is the NPA? When does it meet? So in the fall, and it could be translated in the 6 main languages that are in the Old North End. Alternatively, because masks are at such a need, I found a place where I could buy masks for $2.50 each. And then include this postcard, this business card, or a different postcard in it. So I would ask for either like $600 for that. Totally, I'm asking for $1,485. However, I'll take whatever whatever is okay. I'd ask to split from 2 and 3, because I believe we have similar amount of numbers between folks who don't speak English as a first language. And I can do this tomorrow.
Okay.
I can spend the money tomorrow. I can lay out money for the masks if you want tomorrow, and get paid back, and have a receipt and a voucher on Monday and get paid back.
Well, we know we agree on masks, right? We want to make sure that gets funded. So Kevin, you've got the total figures of split 50-50 between the 2 wards. What does it look like with?
Too. There's there's 2 raised hands too.
Oh, well, are these proposals to spend money?
There's the
Is
Green
somebody else asking for what?
The Green Mountain Club.
And Ben Bernstein, and also Trav Fryer's in the chat here, but he hasn't spoken yet. Yeah. Trav.
Okay.
Yeah, so I put in the proposal for the Repair Cafe. We postponed the first couple that we had planned, but we're still planning to do one on June 20th. It won't.
I didn't know that.
So yeah, I mean, the idea is ideally to do them monthly or quarterly, to continue doing them. So our request is still for funding is still we'd still like to maintain that request, or keep it active, I guess. So yeah, if we're still planning on having it June 20th. And if not, it could get postponed again, but we can definitely spend the money on tools and things to get prepared for that. And it should be easier to do now that the weather is good, that we can have the event outside, and there can be enough space between people and enough airflow. So that's our plan. And we're still requesting the money. I don't honestly remember how much I requested. I can't find my notes of what I submitted. I think it was about $500 for tools and food.
Okay, I can track that down. I'll open up my Google Drive here.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, and if someone else has a funding request? I heard that Sydney mentioned that was somebody else wanted to speak on requesting money.
They did put their hand down, but Ben has his hand raised.
So, okay. So, again, Kevin, you've got the tape there in terms of the split and where we are. It looks like I know that when the steering committee met, we were believing that we'd be leaving a lot of money on the table, and that we would try to have to apologize to the city council for not spending it all. Maybe we were premature. So, what numbers do you have?
Sure. Well, let me start by just referring back to Trav. I looked up your request and it was for $505 total. So just to start us off, I split that in half in my little spreadsheet I have going through all this for $252.50 for each ward. But that's obviously subject to change depending on how we vote. And then for the community dinner, if I heard correctly, it's $1,000 proposed for each ward. And then for the New Americans in Vermont.com marketing materials, it's $742.50 per ward is what's being requested. We still have to put a number on stuff for put your dollar where your heart is with Jessica Hyman, and the Ramble with Gene Waltz, as well as the NPA 2 and 3 operational cost request. We haven't put a number in those columns yet. So which one do we want to go to next?
In terms of operational, we are empowered from what we understood. When we say operational, for example, if the steering committee wanted to buy so many slots on the front page forum, we could spend money for that. If we wanted to put up somebody, we've already talked to somebody who wants to do some signs, and we could do that. We can make those decisions as a steering committee. Also can do that, on July 1 on our own. So I don't think that we are in a position of having to make that decision as for operational funds tonight, although that's entirely up to the thinking and of the rest of the steering committee. But so I leave that open.
Jean is raising her hand.
I'm feeling like it would be appropriate to, not propose any money for the Ramble, knowing that we're sincerely not going to function at the level that we have in the past. So I just want to put it out there for people. Of course, we would like to have something in the bank for next year, but I understand. I feel interested in funding things that are going to immediately serve our community.
Right on. Thank you, Jean.
So what are the totals, Kevin, at the moment? If everything was funded that's been requested?
Before I add that up, I would like to put a number on Jessica Hyman's request. I'll pull up my Google Drive stuff for that, which the funds requested was $500. Jess, is that still accurate?
Yes, that's still accurate. $250 from each ward. Thank you.
Great. Absolutely. Okay, so if we add all that up, just splitting everything down the middle per ward for everything we have so far, leaving out the NPA 2 and 3 operational costs, or any kind of marketing materials that we'd want to make. Let's see. Bear with me. So right now that brings us to, per ward, $2,245.
Great.
That includes funding the Ramble?
Ramble I zeroed out for the purposes of this edition. Based on what Jean just expressed. Would you like me to add together that?
We don't have enough money for that.
You were muted. I think Tony was trying to say something, but he was muted.
Tony, you're muted.
I'm sorry. What I was suggesting is that the Ramble, since we have at $2,245 and we've got $2,500, and the Ramble was not included, then just basically take the additional money to get to $2,500 in from each ward, which is what, $255, something like that, each ward that would go to the Ramble from each ward.
I just have to say, leftovers are my jam.
Right. That's great, but don't forget, we do need some operating expenses, Tony.
We can do that. We can do that from on July 1. We have as much money as we're going to have we can take it from our fiscal 21 money.
Okay, fine.
But what's the status of that? I mean, is that still going to be 2,500, or is that changing? My impression was that we're not sure.
When we don't know, we do know this, that we're unlikely to be cut back below $400 each, and that for the operational costs that we have, we would pass this with the understanding that the steering committee will take some funds out of next fiscal year, whatever the city council deigns to give us for operational costs.
I think it would be safer and more just kind of more financially prudent to just use what's left over as it stands now to allocate operational costs as a steering committee, whatever they may be, using this budget year's funds. Unless you think that there's not enough time for us to get that together.
We have the operational costs covered. I am saying something.
What?
I have the operating costs covered. And
There's some hand raised too.
I couldn't understand what Patrick said.
What was that, Sydney?
I think we have the operational costs covered, Kevin.
Oh, okay.
I think we all should, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
I think we all should acknowledge that without beats available to give to CEDO, you cannot get the funding. So maybe there should be a little bit of a, I don't know, plan B. So A, these things get funded, and if they can't be whatever, like in compliance or like adhere to the guidelines of applying for this thing. And my experience with getting funding, there's just like so many loopholes and so much red tape that a lot of things don't get funded because of that. So plan B is, okay, then the next tier of projects can be, because we're meeting now, but this all has to be done by the 15th.
Yeah.
Short window.
But like, you know, for example, like what I'm trying to say is, for example, operational costs for NPAs 2 and 3 could include just like promotional materials for the promoting the NPA. So like if we just in the next 4 days order like some yard signs, for example, like we talked about earlier, like that would be covered, you know, and we could provide
Kevin?
receipts for that. That would be boom, done.
I totally hear you. As somebody who has tried to usher signs out into the community for an event, it's love the idea. It's not always that easy. I'm just saying, it's not necessarily like, oh, I'm going to make a phone call tomorrow and this is going to get done.
I was going to say, I think what our so to speak, the safety margin or safety net here would be actually the ramble that does have some capacity to provide some receipts. We normally would use the community dinner with Janet Cascad, that would have some extra, so to speak, some capacity to spend and give us receipts on a quick basis. But it sounds like to me that the one that appears most likely to be able to do that would be the ramble itself.
So Tony, are you needing somebody to make a motion, and who is like, does that have to come from the steering committee?
No, the vote is the 16 people who are currently online, assuming they're each from Ward 2 and Ward 3, and that we are able to separate those two groups.
So there are
The
some
steering committee
hands
does not have
raised.
the power to expend money. Huh?
There are some hands raised from the public for people who want to put in. Can I let them share?
Yes.
Yeah, Green
This is
Mountain.
it. I mean, we're going to spend the money tonight. So anybody who wants to chime in here, let's hear it now.
Ready. Feel free. You're under Green Mountain Club. Yep, we can hear you.
It's Alyssa Faber.
Hi, Alyssa.
Yeah. Hi. I have been listening to this and I do not have a proposal, but I'm thinking with the extra money, since I understand it's a receipt issue, but also maybe what we can do right now, because it sounds like we're going to get money for things that can be put off in July. I say that we put more money into the mask issue that was brought up that Melissa said she could find for a certain cost. I think that can expand. It was like 600 or something, Melissa, you said, but I think that money, if we have extra money, should go towards masks for the Old North End, because that's a pressing need. And also Ben has had his hand raised, so make sure we hear that proposal. Thanks.
So thanks, Ben, you can talk now.
Boom. Hi there. I have one question and then maybe some other questions. Janet, has anything that we've requested in the last year and a half come under this proposal that you're making?
I'm not clear what you're asking me.
Well, all right, then I'm going to just expand this out. The North End Studios has been given the mandate by Champlain Housing Trust to provide free of charge space for the NPA and the community dinner. As far as any of the personnel or any of the equipment in that space, that's not necessarily part of the deal. And the deal that we have with Champlain Housing Trust is if our time and equipment is needed for something, then we can charge for it. We've chosen not to. But I have made requests simply because if I'm the one who's doing the work and I'm part of this community, I will donate it. But I'm backing off on a lot of activities with North End Studios on a day-to-day basis, which means that in order for something to be properly hosted and all public events in our space need to be hosted by somebody who is working for North End Studios, that position needs to be funded. And we have talked about it and talked about it, and I've heard several different opinions from this committee as to whether or not that can be done. So that's one point. Also, equipment has been used and requests have been made for additional tables. Somebody decided that we needed more microphones, which is way off the mark. And I suggested we needed a new projector because the one we have is 25 years old and cannot react properly to the requests of the people who are speaking during the meetings. And I filled out some paper. I've talked to some people. Tony, I wrote you a proposal to your email and asked you if you provided that information to everybody else. I never got a response on that. So here we are discussing a bunch of things. And once again, year two, I'm not hearing anything to do with the things that I've requested. What about that?
Okay, number one, I don't recall that email at all.
I can send it to you. It was written directly to you. It was paragraphs with a listing of things that we need and the prices.
Right, I would appreciate that, and of course, it's
months
best.
ago.
Fine, send it again, but I would suggest next time.
Ben, can I jump in, Tony?
Yeah.
Ben, I believe we've had this discussion a couple of times about being able to pay people. We cannot do that with the funding source.
Yes, Ben, Patrick, you also made suggestions about how there's some workarounds with that. But you know, part of this has
Okay, Ben, I don't think I want to get to that conversation right now, Ben.
All right.
It's too late. It's late. It's an hour is late, Ben.
Yeah. Well, you know, all this being true, it still leaves us in the position.
We did hear you, Ben.
And what?
We talked about it several times, and we did listen to you, Ben, and really did hear you.
And so we're in a position where funding is being given out and our name, North End Studios, has not been even mentioned as being in need or having presented anything. We're talking about 6 tables. We're talking about a projector, aside from any money for personnel, which is a separate issue and needs to be talked about because it's a requirement of ours that our places, when used with our people, that they need to be paid. And we've let this go. So it's more at this point about the equipment and a discussion for another time about the reasons why we want people there, because we know our space better than anybody. Volunteers are inconsistent and unreliable, and it's our equipment and it's our place. And we need to keep it functioning for everyone, not just a bunch of people one night a month, because they can do enough damage in that time, which we as North End Studios pays for, not you and not the Champlain Housing Trust. So those, you know, it's like, yes, we've talked about it for more than a year, and here we are discussing a lot of other issues and a lot of other money, but nothing for us.
Hi, I have a brand new projector I would like to donate to the NPA for the usage. Thank you. That's enough for that one.
Melissa, I don't like your attitude.
Okay, Brian's
No, it's a little bit uppity.
hand.
Come on.
Brian has his hand raised.
Fuck you.
He just did.
I'm unmuted. I'm in, right?
Yep, you're all good.
Yes.
So I raised my hand before Ben got on. I think that was an interesting conversation. I hope we can find a way to ensure that the studio, North End Studios, still has, you know, the support it needs to keep this a viable place for us to gather. I think it's a little hard right now, given where we're at, and so little time left. And I would like to go back to what Alyssa suggested and ask for some funding to be going to the mask project as a good urgent need that this community has. It's clear that residents of the Old North End who don't have access to the masks need them, and I think we can do a lot with a fairly small amount of money. So I'd like to maybe make a motion. I think Alyssa said $500 or $600. I don't know what she said. What was the amount?
It's the $255 each ward that is available that we have not allocated to this point.
So I would move. I was going to move it, but following a motion is discussion, so I can still move it. Can I move for both wards, Tony, or do I just move for Ward 3 since that's my ward? I guess I don't know.
What I suggest is that is basically there would be two motions, one for each ward. So you could basically the split of the funds as Kevin has pointed out, that gets us up to $2,500. Basically half of all the requests plus the $255 for masks, a separate additional for masks be approved. And then somebody from Ward 2 can make the same motion, and then we have everything
great.
on the table.
Great. I so move, as Tony just stated. I hope that's helpful to staff if you need that clarified. Mr. Reddington is much more articulate on this than I am.
I second it as a resident of Ward 3 now. And it's up to somebody from Ward 2 to make a similar resolution for your wards, for your ward.
Okay, Patrick, Andrew and I, Charlie, we can't hear you guys. We're only getting every other word. So we don't know what you're proposing.
We got to get you some high-speed internet.
Go in the house, get out of the backyard.
Telecom.
Your neighbor, Janet, has really good internet.
Who else is Ward 2?
Their cell phone.
They can't go in our house, Barbara.
Oh,
yeah, right.
They can't, but I have set up another network.
This is Charlie again. This is Charlie talking. And what the three of us would like to propose is giving $500 to Jess, giving $500 to Trav, giving $2,000 to Melissa, $2,000 to Janet.
So that's over $5,000.
That's exactly $5,000. 2255. 2255.
There was a motion and second.
$2,000 to Janet.
$2,000. We already have a motion on the floor.
Melissa, $500 Jess, and $500 to Trav.
We have a motion on the floor for Ward 3. That's done. We do not have a motion on the floor for Ward 2.
Well, let's go walk closer.
Max Tracy lives in Ward 2. Who else lives in Ward? Well, wait a second. Patrick, are you Ward 2?
Yes, he is.
Okay, so then if we could get those numbers down that they're proposing for Ward 2.
Can you guys hear me? Can I suggest one thing? We're
Yes,
on the
please.
same page.
Sure.
Kevin, I think you have this typed up. Could you share your screen so everyone knows what the numbers are and what they're voting on? Is that possible?
Kevin, you'd be able to share it with the share screen.
Sure.
Yeah. Spreadsheet.
And then just for voting, those of us who are not visible, are we just raising our hand for voting from wards? Are you going to make sure that you know who we are? I don't know. Like, how's that working? Or only the people that are on the video allowed to vote?
Oh, no, anyone who is either by phone or by video, there's 16 of us right now that I see who are actually either live in Ward, who are residents of either Ward 2 or Ward 3, as the case might be, which was there's different resolutions. Those are the people that are eligible to vote.
I'll enable everyone to speak.
Let's see, that looks pretty good.
And Molly, for some reason, it won't let me allow you to speak because you might have an older version of Zoom. But if you agree, you can raise your hand and we can try that.
And so if you had $255 each ward for masks, that gets us up to 2,500.
Okay, can I say something?
Sure.
You know, I'm willing to vote for this or something like Charlie and Kevin's proposal, but I want to make sure that Ben's concerns get addressed at some point.
Well, Barbara, as I understand it, from what Tony was saying, starting July 1st, it's a new proposal, provided the money shows up. So if we come and talk to you in early July about these things, how soon? Because obviously we're not pushing to have on-site meetings for a while. So the things that I'm requesting aren't really necessary until we can actually use the space. But it is something that when we're up and running, in order to make the meetings run smoothly, that the equipment we have do the job and that people aren't scrounging for tables when they're setting up. I've seen them do that. And, you know, we really should be up to speed with that. We're not asking for a lot. We're just trying to make everything more efficient. We don't need it until we have meetings. So if we push stuff over until the new budget, that's okay.
Okay, that's great, but I just want to make sure it doesn't get lost again.
Yeah,
Barbara,
that's all.
Barbara, I'd like to add on Ben's sentiments. Also, we need to address at some point how like whenever we are sourcing any of these types of grants or money, it never includes paying people for their time.
Right.
I do not understand how we have just created this culture in which everybody is supposed to volunteer their time until they are so burnt out and freak
Brian, please
and
explain.
like and then
I
uttering
saw Brian Pine smiling.
and didn't Ben utter the F word somewhere in there? You want to
No,
because we are all taken advantage of. And I don't understand this culture of everybody's always supposed to volunteer their time.
Okay.
I've had my piece. Okay, guys, I've had my piece. Obviously, the Ramble proposal is taken off. And I'm going to go have a life now and hope you all have a really good night.
Right. I want to make a comment on why we do not have wages involved here. Because of the city financial system, if we were to pay somebody's wages, then you're into the whole thing of having to report those wages, the taxes, the tax reporting systems and so forth. So that's one reason we do not have in any of our grants money to actually pay an individual to do work.
And Tony, that's too black and white. Because
here is a volunteer.
Like, I don't know how to fill out a W-9 or a W-2 form. Like, come on.
And it's also black and white. There's lots of ways that kind of reporting doesn't have, if you're an independent contractor, if you're buying a package from somebody that includes wages, it's not on the city. It becomes North End Studios has the problem, not the city.
We will have you deal with the city financial system, Ben, and represent us on that as a volunteer.
We do it all the time with them.
So, okay, I'm just saying.
Can we vote on this spreadsheet?
What?
We're waiting on Kevin to put the $255 from each ward for masks for Melissa, for Melissa's line, basically.
I could very much use, I'm happy to do all this. I could very much use help with distribution though. Just saying. Of the masks when I get them.
I will help. I propose the increase to you, so I will help, Melissa.
So, Kevin, are you going to put $255 there for under Melissa's line additionally for each ward for the masks?
I'm working on it. Yes.
Okay. And then I think I know we have a Ward 3 resolution on the floor that allocates $2,500. And from what Andrew or Patrick said, does theirs add up to 2,500?
Screen sharing makes it very laggy. So give me a second, please.
Yeah. My question is whether or not the motion by the Ward 2 people was parallel to the Ward 3 motion. That was my question.
I don't know.
I have a question for Brian Pine since he's on the line. Have you heard anything about, or can you provide any information about NPA funding for fiscal year 21?
I assume the initial proposal, which was not that well received by the council, was to reduce citywide from 20,000 back down to 10. And the administration's description or explanation for that was that the costs of convening, because it's a virtual meeting, have plummeted, and so therefore NPAs in many cases were not using their funding fully. So there was that was the argument or assertion, and there was some pushback from the council that now more than ever we need this type of connection. So it has yet to be known what will come out on Monday. I don't think it will be. I don't know. Actually, I'd be guessing, so I don't want to guess.
Sure.
Does the council have control over increasing if NPAs and the council members don't think that?
By charter, the council has a simple majority requirement to take anything out of or reduce any of the mayor's budget, but it takes 2/3 to add something back in. So council ultimately does, but it's a super majority requirement.
Thanks.
While we're waiting here, just one last note is that the steering committee met face to face at a social distance this last week. We can do the same thing in July or August. And Ben, it's important that you come to a steering committee meeting and we can talk this all out. I certainly haven't been aware. It's obviously we've been away from this now for 3 or 4 months anyway. So this is, I want to call it historical, if nothing else. And and I don't think there's a single person on a steering committee who's not sympathetic to the situation. So it looks like, again, I didn't get an answer from Patrick and from Andrew as
what
to
would you
the
like?
motion that they made for Ward 2. Is it parallel? Is this
the motion from Ward 2 from Andrew, Charlie, and Patrick is parallel.
Okay, then I guess we're in a position. Is there any more discussion from either Ward 2 or Ward 3 on this particular breakdown of expenditure of funds? Now, let's add in here, and Gene Walsh, this is important. I hope that you and the Ramble will be available should one or more of these proposals that we're approving right now not be able to utilize all their funds. That you would be our backstop in this case with some expenditures of printing or whatever.
Dinner can be a backstop.
What's that?
Community
so we got 2
dinner.
backstops. All right.
We'd
Any
love
more
to get
discussion
paid.
from either word on these 2 motions? Somebody ready?
Second.
Are we ready for that vote?
Second.
We got 1,000 mosquitoes here that
Say
are
again?
backing us up. 1,000 votes.
We're outside.
Call the
All right.
question. Let's vote.
Okay. Why don't we vote in order of Ward 2 first? Those who live in Ward 2, I'll let you, which includes obviously the 3 people getting bitten by the flies and so forth.
Charlie's
And
Ward
Janet, that makes 4 from Ward 2.
Charlie's Ward 3.
3, interact.
How come he went to the wrong, how come he's out away from the ward? All right.
Don't worry about it. Just vote.
Yeah, thank you, Charlie. Come on.
So unless let's put it this way, is it unanimous? Is Ward 3 unanimous in support of this breakdown and the award of these monies?
Yes.
I'll speak for Ward 3. Okay, then, and somebody can count the votes for Ward 2 then. I don't want to try to count
Okay,
there.
1, 2, meow, 3.
And what about Max? Is he on there still?
Max left the building.
Oh.
Okay,
I'm Ward 2 now, so that's a yay.
There is no building.
I was going to say, unless there's some other some other item at the moment, I declare by unanimous actions by the Ward
Frustration?
2 people and the Ward 3 people voting separately that this $2,500 from each ward is hereby appropriated. And Brian, I hope that our counselors, Brian Pine, Perry Freeman, and Max Tracy are aware that, as usual, Wards 2 and 3 are able to spend their money. And this has been the case ever since I've been on for 8 or 9 years I've been here. And Charlie, you go back to the 1980s. We spent our money, and we want the full $2,500 come July 1. And we'll work again, those who've received the money, they need to, each ward, a steering committee member from each ward needs to initial those invoices, and they've got to get those over to Pet Kamenivan or Sydney by the 15th, or at least let them know that those invoices are on the way, so that we make sure we meet the end of the month deadline. Are there any other questions at the moment?
Somebody named Molly Everson has her hand up.
She's Ward 2 and she voted yay.
Okay.
I have a question, Tony. This is Jess.
Yes.
So for the receipts, should I get the receipt to any steering committee member?
You cut out all of a sudden, like, Jess, we couldn't hear you. We can't hear you.
I can hear.
For the receipts, should I get the receipts to any steering committee member, and that steering committee member will get the initials from the other ward, or do I need to get the receipts to representatives of each ward?
Each ward, because say I'm Ward 3 right now. I can't sign off on something from Ward 2.
Right. Okay. So, but you're not going to pass it on to a Ward 2 rep. So I'll just send it out to ward reps, and then will the ward reps get those to CEDO, or should I collect the initialed receipts and bring them to CEDO myself?
Work it out with each individual steering committee member. And by the way, our telephone numbers and our emails are all on the website, the Neighborhood Planning Assembly website, Ward 2. If you do a search, you'll find our telephones and emails. They're also on the, those numbers are also on the agendas that you guys all have.
Super. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you for the applications. A week ago, we thought we were going to leave several $1,000s on the table. I'll be quite honest with you. So this is great news.
Also, Jess, it's worth noting I'm no longer Ward 3. I am Ward 2. So if you'd like to send it along to me, I can help you out.
Okay.
So we have to.
No. Because I have $2,000 to spend in 2 days, I want to make this clear. So, could you send us out an email, please, of who is Ward 2 and who is Ward 3 on the steering committee, and who is specifically
on the agenda that you have in your hands.
Does it say who's on which?
Yes.
Who's which?
Yes.
And who can I just go to their house? Because I know where Patrick lives, so I can just go to Patrick's house and get him to sign off. And then Ward 3, I don't know whose house I'm going to, but I'm going to go to your house and get it signed off.
Charlie.
But don't go to mine, because
Charlie, go to my house. Done.
Okay.
Is that okay, Charlie?
Because I'm coming tomorrow.
Okay.
Good night, everybody.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. It's been a wonderful night.
Bye, Barbara.
It's made my day.
Thanks, everyone.
Good.